The cold metal floor pressed against her cheek as she lay still, her breath slow and weak. Her name was Sorry, her body was bruised, and her wrists were tight in glowing cuffs that burned whenever she moved the room. Around her was dark with only one red light blinking slowly from the ceiling, and every time it blinked, it reminded her of her heartbeat, slow, steady, fading. She had not seen the sun in days. Maybe more, she had lost count. After the pain started, they came in groups, tall creatures, with sharp limbs and long eyes. They never spoke, they only watched, took notes, and then pressed buttons that made her scream. Her voice had grown dry, her throat raw, her skin torn, but she never begged, never gave them the satisfaction she came from. A peaceful world where her people spoke with thoughts, not words. They sang to the stars, and grew light from their hands. She had power. Once she could shape wind and make flowers bloom with a smile, but now her power was locked, sealed by machines. She could feel it screaming inside her like a caged bird. The aliens, the Drek, called her a test subject. They said her blood was rare, that her mind was special. They said nothing else. They only hurt her, and when they left she was alone, in the dark. Again, only the red light blinking above her, and the soft hum of something terrible waiting beyond the walls. She whispered one name again and again, her lips dry, her voice just a breath. Jace. Jace, the human with fire in his eyes, and a wild heart. She remembered his laugh from that night under the twin moons, when they first met on neutral ground. He had shared food with her, even when his team warned him not to. She had healed a cut on his hand without asking, and he had looked at her like she was more than an alien, more than just something strange he had promised if anything happened, if she ever needed him. He would come. She smiled at that memory, but it was weak now, a flicker in the dark like a star lost behind clouds. Maybe he had forgotten, maybe he had died, maybe no one was coming. The room shook once, just a soft tremble. Her eyes opened halfway. Then it shook again. Louder metal groaned in the distance, and somewhere far down the hall, alarms chirped for a second, and then went silent. The red light flickered. She held her breath. Voices outside, low, fast. One of them said something she could not understand. Another voice replied, but it sounded tense, sharp. She recognized fear. She had heard it before in her own voice. When the pain was too much, a scream echoed, not hers this time, but her Drek. One of the guards. The sound was short, but full of terror. Something was wrong. Someone was here, and it was not part of the experiment. She tried to lift her head, but her neck hurt. Her arms were too weak, but she kept trying. The red light blinked again, and for a moment it turned white, then red again. Her heart began to beat faster. The wall beside her clicked. The door was locked, sealed by layers of alien code and strong metal, but it was reacting to something. Someone was close, very close. She heard a bang, then another, a louder one. The metal bent inward slightly. Dust fell from the ceiling. She stared at the door, her mouth open, but no sound. Came one more blast, and the wall cracked. Light poured in, not the cold light of machines, but a golden flare from a human pulse cannon, the kind she had seen once in training, the kind that only worked when someone was angry or desperate. Shape stepped through smoke and fire. Tall human, armored, face covered in dirt and blood. He had a broken shoulder pad, and one hand bleeding, but he held the weapon steady, and his eyes were wild. He looked around, saw her on the floor, and froze for just a second. Then his face changed. Something soft and something fierce mixed together. He rushed forward and fell to his knees beside her. Just. She whispered, but it was only in her mind. Her lips could not move, but he heard her somehow, because he said her name with a voice like thunder and tears. Sorry. I found you, he said, loud and real and alive. She felt his hand touch her cheek, warm, even through the pain. I told you I'd come, he said, and behind him the hall exploded again. With alien screams he stood up, turned to face whatever was coming, and raised his cannon. Stay behind me, he said, even if she could not move, even if her world was fading, even if hope had been gone for days. She believed him because he had come, because he was real, because Jace had kicked down the door, and everything was about to change. She closed her eyes as the red light above her shattered, and the room filled with fire and freedom. Jace moved through the broken hallway with blood on his hands and fire in his breath. Each step echoed like a drum in the deep as he carried Sorry gently across his shoulder, her body limp, her skin cold, but her heart still beating, faint and quiet against his back. The corridor stank of Drek. Chemicals and fear wires sparked overhead, and shadows danced on the walls like ghosts watching every move he made. But he did not stop, he did not speak, he only moved forward, one goal in his mind, and nothing else mattered. She had saved him once on a mission gone wrong, when he was surrounded and bleeding, and no one came for him. She had appeared from the trees, her skin glowing, and her hands full of light. She had not spoken a word, but her eyes had told him everything. You are not alone, not while I breathed. Now, it was his turn to return the promise. He had heard whispers on the black market of a Drek lab hidden in the rock of a dead moon. They called it the Grey Neston said nothing left alive ever came out. No one believed him when he asked about Sorry, not even his old squad, not even the captain who once called him brother. They said the Drek took her and she was gone just like all the others. But he had seen the footage, one single frame. A blurry image of her face on a monitor behind two Drek scientists, and he knew he had no choice. He bought stolen maps, traded weapons. 4 codes, broke into a guard station for a clearance chip, and flew through a minefield. Just to reach this hell now. He was here, and she was in his arms, and nothing else mattered. Voice crackled through the intercom, in a language he barely understood. But the tone was clear, a warning. Someone was coming, maybe a squad, maybe. A beast, maybe worse. He looked at Sari, her face bruised, but peaceful, and set her down gently in a corner behind a fallen steel plate. Stay low, he whispered, even though she could not hear. He stood and took a breath. His armor cracked his left arm. Numb his pulse, cannon glowing faint, but still alive. He heard the stomps before he saw them. Drek guards, 6 tall, armored with glowing spears, and hate in their eyes. They laughed. When they saw him, one even pointed and mocked in broken Terran human. Lost again. He did not answer. Instead he raised the cannon, and pulled the trigger, once, twice, 3 times. The hallway flashed with blue fire, and screams to went down fast. The others charged. He rolled left, kicked one in the leg, grabbed its weapon, and shoved it through its chest. The others circled, but he was faster. Rage and memory pushed him beyond pain. He slammed the last Drek into the wall, broke its helmet with a punch, and left it twitching. He turned back to Sari. She had moved slightly, one hand reaching toward the light. Her eyes fluttered, half open, and she whispered something too soft to hear, but he saw the shape of his name on her lips. He knelt beside her, brushed her hair back, and smiled. Just a little. We are not done yet, he said. A map on the wall flickered weakly, showing emergency paths and escape lifts. Most were offline, but one tunnel still glowed green. He lifted her again, and followed the light. The path twisted downward through heat vents and locked bulkheads. Some doors opened with the stolen chip, others he had to break through with force. Along the way he passed cells, empty rooms, broken machines, some still dripping with what he could not name. Every step burned in his legs, but he kept going. They reached a large chamber filled with floating cables and strange lights in the center. A giant sphere pulsed like a heart, and beside it stood a console with Drek symbols flashing red. He placed Sari down beside a pillar, and walked to the console. His hand hovered over it, unsure. Then she spoke behind him, her voice weak but clear. That controls the vault door. He turned to her, surprised, but nodded, then pressed the sequence. The ground shook. As the sphere spun faster, lights blazed and a new passage opened, revealing a long narrow tunnel glowing blue. That way, she said, then fainted again. He caught her just in time, and carried her into the light behind them. Alarms howled louder than before, and the floor began to crack. The base was waking up, angry, and Jace ran through the tunnel, breathing hard, muscles screaming, but his grip never loosened. His steps never slowed, because he was the man they forgot, the one they left behind, and now he was the one breaking everything to save the only person who ever believed in him. Up ahead, the end of the tunnel pulsed with bright blue light, and beyond it, he knew more danger waited, but also hope, and maybe, just maybe, freedom for both of them. The blue tunnel hissed as Jace stepped into it, carrying Sari close to his chest, her breath still shallow, her skin still cold, but her presence alive, and that was enough for him to keep going. His boots slammed against the glowing floor. The walls around him vibrated with an unknown hum, like the entire station was awake and watching him. Behind him, the metal groaned with rage. The Drek were coming, not just guards now, but hunters, the kind bred for speed and blood. Their claws could tear steel, and their minds were linked with each other, moving like one. But he did not look back, not once. He had reached a thick vault door, tall as a dropship, wide as a tank. Its surface etched with ancient runes and security seals. No one was supposed to get through it, but Jace was not just anyone. He had the stolen Drek key crystal from the lab he destroyed, and the rage of a human who had come too far to flee. Set Sari down gently against the wall, her body limp, her face calm despite the horror around her. He kissed her forehead, whispered a promise he had no time to finish, then stood and faced the door. He slid the crystal into the main lock. Sparks danced, and a deep groan echoed through the chamber. The door pulsed once, then began to open. Slowly, the air beyond it was thick and hot like breathing fire. Jace did not flinch. Inside was a large chamber, shaped like a circle, with high black walls covered in moving lights, and screens in the center. A platform rose from the floor with strange machines glowing red and white and silver. Jace stepped in, slowly scanning everything. His instincts screamed trap, but his heart said forward. He moved to a console, and activated the map feed. The moment he touched it, a loud alarm exploded through the chamber, and the door behind him slammed shut, sealing Sari on the other side. He turned and ran to it, but the control panel blinked red from above. Long spindly machines dropped down from the ceiling. They had no faces, no voices, just sharp limbs and glowing blue eyes, and they moved with one goal: to kill. Jace pulled out his cannon, aimed and fired. A burst of plasma tore through the first machine, melting its core. He dodged under the second, slamming it into the wall with a grunt, and spun to avoid the third, but it slashed across his back, burning deep into his armor. He yelled and shot upward, blowing it apart with a shot that left smoke in the air. Two more came from opposite ends, claws raised together. Jace jumped over a crate, landed hard and rolled behind a broken generator. His breath was short, his side bleeding, his cannon nearly drained, but his eyes were still on fire. He grabbed a metal rod from the ground, and when the next machine came close, he stabbed it through the chest, then used its falling body as a shield against another attack. The explosion rocked the chamber, but Jace stood up, coughing smoky, limped to the control panel, and slammed his fist against it over and over, until the lights turned green, and the door creaked open again. Sari was still there, her eyes now half open, and watching him. He ran to her, dropped to his knees, and held her hand tight. Her fingers moved just enough to squeeze back, and that small motion filled him with more power than any battle serum could ever give. They had to move now. The walls trembled, and the ceiling cracked above them. The whole section was collapsing. Maybe on purpose, maybe because he had triggered something they were never meant to see. Jace lifted her again and turned to the only other way out, a narrow path behind the broken machines, glowing with soft white lights. The air there felt cooler, like it led to something pure. Maybe freedom, maybe more death. He did not care. They entered the path as another quake shook the ground behind them. The floor split where they had just stood, and flames roared through the chamber, swallowing the machines and the map, and the old Dorgeous walked, with his jaw clenched, his arms tight around Saria's legs. Heavy but steady ahead, the tunnel curved into a wide space, with a strange silver tree in the middle. Its branches touched the ceiling, and its roots glowed like stars under. The tree stood something or someone tall and still and silent, wrapped in black armor with no face, only a single red light in the center of its head. Jace stopped, Sari still in his arms, and stared at the figure. His heart beat louder than the alarms behind him. The figure spoke in a voice that sounded like metal scraping. "Bone Sheet does not belong to you." Jace stepped forward, his voice low and sharp. "She does not." Silence that followed was cold and thick, like fog before battle, and in that frozen moment, both man and machine prepared to do one thing: burn everything, to protect what mattered most. The red light on the armored figure's chest pulsed once, as if it was breathing, as if it was alive. Jace stared at it, his grip on Sari firm, his mind racing but his step steady. He had fought Drek soldiers before, even battled monsters in the pits of stolen planets, but this thing standing under the silver tree felt different. It felt wrong, like it was made, not born, like it learned pain not through feeling, but through watching. The figure moved, without warning, fast and smooth, like a shadow with weight. It raised a blade from its arm, long and sharp, glowing with sick green light. Jace barely dodged as the weapon sliced through the air. Where his neck had been, he rolled on his side, his back screaming in pain, and clutched Sari closer, making sure she never touched the floor. He ducked behind a pillar and set her down gently. Her eyelids fluttered, but she did not wake. He kissed her forehead, whispered her name, and stood again, this time pulling the last energy core from his belt and slotting it into his cannon. The light on the weapon flared blue once, then dimmed. He only had 5 shots left, and no room for mistakes. The figure stalked forward, slow now, knowing it had the advantage. Its voice came again, cold and dry. "Give me the girl and you may leave." Jace shook his head, stepped into the open, and said nothing. He just fired one shot that blasted through the figure's leg. The metal sparked, but it did not fall. Instead, it turned its head and charged again. Jace ran sideways, leading it away from Sari, firing another round into the creature's chest. This time, the shot sent it flying backward, crashing into a wall, and shaking the silver tree above them. Roots pulled from the ground, and glowing dust fell like snow. But the figure rose again, slower now, damaged, but not done. It was not built to feel fear, and neither was Jessica. Grabbed a broken pipe from the floor, and threw it at the ceiling above the figure. The structure cracked, and dropped heavy wires on the machine, trapping it for just a moment, enough for Jace to sprint back to Sari, lift her again, and rush toward the far end of the chamber. The exit door was sealed with alien code, spinning fast symbols Jace had seen once in a stolen Drek manual. He remembered 3 of them, the ones that meant release, protect, and silence. He pressed them in that order, and the door hissed open, revealing another long hallway, bathed in red light and smoke behind him. Metal screamed as the figure freed itself. Just ran the hallway, twisted and dipped as the entire base began to collapse. Fire burst from vents, walls split open, showing layers of dark slime and cables that pulsed like veins. Sari's body grew heavier with every step, but he did not stop, not for breath, not for rest. He turned a corner and nearly slipped on the blood of fallen guards. Drek bodies twisted and burned from something that came through here before him. He looked at their wounds and knew it was not his work. Something else had torn them apart with claws, and the lights above flickered, and the speakers crackled with alien commands, desperate and broken. The Drek had lost control of their own station, and now the whole place was eating itself. Jace reached a collapsed gate and forced it open with his bare hands. Metal cut into his skin, but he did not slow, not when Sari coughed softly against his neck, her voice a whisper. He smiled through the pain and kissed her hair away. Entered a wide chamber filled with emergency shuttles, some crushed, some half-fueled, and one still glowing green. Ready to launch, Jace ran to it and placed Sari gently inside, securing her to the co-pilot seat, then turned to the controls. His fingers flew across buttons he did not fully understand, guided only by instinct, and fury engines roared below them, and the floor began to rise as the launch pad activated from the fire and smoke. The armored figure emerged again, blade glowing and body sparking its red light now, flickering like a dying star. Jace opened the shuttle door and stood between it and the figure, breathing heavy, one hand holding the last plasma knife in his belt. "You want her? You go through me." The figure charger just screamed and ran forward, both of them clashing in the middle of the chamber, sparks flying, metal grinding, screams echoing through the station. The end. Only one of them stood, blood dripping from his arm, armor cracked, breath shaking. But Jace climbed into the shuttle, closed the hatch, and looked at Sari. Her hand reached out and touched his. He smiled as the ship lifted off, leaving behind the burning base, the dead screams, and the thing he had become to save her. Outside, the stars waited, and for the first time in days he let himself believe they might actually be free. The shuttle shook as it broke through the collapsing dome of the Drek base, fire trailing behind like wings of warning. Jace sat at the controls, blood soaking his sleeve, one hand still clutching the knife he had used to win the last fight, his breath shallow, his face covered in ash, but his eyes locked on the stars ahead beside him. Sari stirred, her voice barely a whisper, as she said his name. He turned to her and saw a faint glow around her skin, a shimmer he had not seen since the day they met. Something inside her was waking, something long buried. The console blinked red, then yellow, then green before it fizzled into static. Jace frowned, tapped it once, then twice, before the screen went dark. A second later, the engines stuttered, and the ship began to drift, pulled not by gravity but by something invisible and strong. He checked the nav map, but it showed nothing. The shuttle spun gently before sliding into a wide tunnel made of living metal walls, curved like the inside of a beast, pulsing with light and energy. It was not natural, it was not Drek, it was something older, something forgotten. The shuttle slowed on its own, guided by invisible force, until it stopped in a wide chamber shaped like a heart. Wires dangled from the ceiling and moved like they were alive. Screens on the walls showed symbols that changed too fast to read. A soft hum filled the space, not like a machine, more like a deep breath waiting. Jace reached for his weapon, but the door opened before he could move. Outside, the chamber glowed blue with strange light, and at the center was a platform with what looked like a cocoon, tall and silver and wrapped in roots. It pulsed with energy that made the air feel thick. Ari gasped, her body now floating slightly, her eyes glowing bright blue, like stars in deep space. She looked at the cocoon, then at Jace, and whispered one word: home. He stepped out, holding her in his arms. The air felt heavy, each step harder than the last, but he followed the light, as if something inside him understood the way, without being told. The cocoon opened slowly. Inside was a structure like a throne made of crystal and bone, not built for sitting, but for merging. Jace set Sari down before it, and watched as she walked forward, her steps weak, but guided by something stronger than pain. She turned to him, eyes full of tears and memory, and said, "This place is my beginning. They used me because I could hear it, but they never knew how to listen." The floor lit up beneath her feet, the roots lifted and touched her skin gently. They wrapped around her arms and her back and her head, without force, without pain, as if welcoming her back after years lost. Jace watched, without speaking, his hands clenched, his body tense, ready to strike if anything went wrong. But Sariomi smiled and closed her eyes. The light around her grew brighter, and the chamber itself responded. The walls shifted, revealing old carvings of stars and wars and worlds destroyed, then rebuilt by hands like hers, hands that glowed with power and heart. The Drek had found this place, and tried to use it, tried to twist it, for their own purpose, but it was never theirs. Their system spoke for the first time, its voice soft and full of echoes. "Welcome, daughter of the mind. Would you like to reset?" Sari nodded, her voice steady and calm. Reset, and free energy burst from the platform, racing through the walls and out into the tunnels beyond. Jace felt the station quake from below, not in collapse, but in rebirth. Lights turned from red to gold, alarms silenced, doors opened with soft hisses, and the fire stopped. A shuttle lifted again, this time with ease, as if the entire structure now obeyed her command. Sorry floated beside him, her wounds fading, her strength returning, her smile warm and full of peace. Jace looked at her, unsure what to say, unsure what to feel, but she took his hand and said, "Thank you, not just for saving me, but for reminding me who I was." He nodded, still stunned, still holding the edge of reality with bleeding fingers, but now, with hope at his side, the station opened above them, revealing the stars in full glory. The shuttle soared out into the void, leaving the old behind and carrying something new, something strong, something alive. But deep in the heart of the maze, where the cocoon had once stood, a small red light blinked once, then again, as if something had survived, something that had learned from watching, and was not ready to sleep just yet. The stars outside the shuttle shimmered like ice in fire, cold, yet burning bright. Jace sat beside Sorry, his hand in hers, watching her breathe, watching her light grow stronger with every passing second. Her body, once broken, now whole, her eyes, once dim, now glowing like twin sunshine, had become something more than she was before, something ancient and new, something the Drek feared and never understood. The shuttle moved through space without controls, as if the station itself still guided them, as if will shaped the course ahead. Then suddenly the ship stopped in front of a giant sphere made of black crystal, floating alone in the void. No planets, no moons, just the sphere, pulsing with strange color. Jace stood and looked out the front window, his fingers tense, his heart unsure. He had seen many things across the stars, but never anything like this. It felt like the end of something, but also the beginning of something much greater. Sorry opened her eyes and whispered, "It is waiting for me." The last door, the one they never wanted me to reach. The shuttle hatch opened without command, and a bridge of light extended toward the sphere. Jace reached for his weapon, but Sorry touched his hand and shook her head. "No weapons here, no fear, only truth." They stepped out together, walking slowly across the light bridge, surrounded by silent stars above and below. Nothing to protect them, nothing to hold on to. Just trust, and the bond between them. As they reached the surface of the sphere, it opened not with sound, but with motion, layers of crystal folding like petals, revealing a chamber inside, filled with floating symbols, streams of color, and a soft voice that spoke without words. It was the voice of memory, the voice of all who came before Cyrus. People once guardians of thought and dream, now nearly lost, erased by war and time, but not forgotten, not by this place. The chamber pulsed and formed a doorway, not made of stone or metal, but of living light. It shimmered with every step they took, closer until it filled their vision, and whispered their names. Sari stepped forward, and the door reacted, its shape shifting, its colors changing like it knew her, like it loved her. But then it paused and changed again, as Jace approached. The light grew darker, colder, uncertain. The door spoke now, with real sound, and real challenge. "He is not of the blood, he is not meant to pass." Jace stood still, his shoulders square, his jaw tight. He looked at Sari, then at the door, and said, "If she walks through, I go with her, or none of us go at all." The door rippled with silence, as if thinking, then answered, "He carries rage, he carries violence, he is dangerous." Sari stepped between them, her voice clear, her back straight, her power rising. "He carries heart, he carries hope, he is why I remember who I am." The door pulsed again, then changed its color, becoming soft and silver like moonlight. It whispered once more, then opened together. They stepped through, and inside found not fire or battle, but a vast garden floating in endless light, full of memory and song, voices of her people echoing from trees that glowed, rivers that sang, skies that moved with thought. Sari walked ahead, her eyes wide, her smile full of tears. She knelt by a tree and touched its bark, her hand lighting up as the tree spoke in an old tongue, welcoming her home, calling her name with love. Jace stood behind her, unsure where to look, unsure if he belonged here at all. But Sari turned and held out her hand, and when he touched her, the whole garden reacted, as if accepting him, as if the heart she had protected now protected him in return. From the sky above, a final light descended and took shape into a figure, not Drek, not human, not alien, but made of all three. Its voice was many voices together. "You are the first to return, and the first to bring one not born of us. Your bond has opened what we could not, your love has awakened what we lost." Sari looked at the figure, her voice calm and clear. "Can we fix what was broken?" The figure answered, "Only with truth, only with pain, only together." Geth stepped forward and nodded, his voice steady and sure. "Then tell us what must be done." The figure raised its hands, and the garden faded, turning into a map of stars, all dark except one small light in the distance, flickering, barely alive. "That is the last cradle, the last hope. If it dies, everything ends. Go there, carry what you have learned, protect it with all you are." Sorry took Jace's hand, her light wrapping around his skin like breath. Will go. The chamber faded, the door closed, and the sphere began to hum. The shuttle returned to them now, changed, now stronger, its metal shining with the same silver light as the garden. Its path set toward the cradle of the stars. Jace looked at Sari one last time before launch, and saw not a prisoner, not a victim, but the future in living form, and knew no matter what waited ahead, he would face it without fear, as long as she walked beside him. The stars moved slowly outside as the shuttle flew toward the last cradle, its engines silent, its course guided by something deeper than coordinates. Sari sat with her eyes closed, her body calm, her hands glowing faintly with silver light. She was no longer the same girl who had been taken and tortured, no longer the one who whispered Jace's name in pain. She was something more now, something vast, something ancient, reborn through fire and truth. Jace stood near the front window, watching the light ahead grow brighter each second. His wounds had faded, his armor patched, his mind still replaying every moment, every fight, every scream, and every promise he had made to her. He had no doubt left, no questions, no fear, because she was beside him and he would never leave her. Again the cradle came into view, a small world wrapped in silver vines, orbiting a dead sun, but glowing like it held a spark from the beginning of time. No ships, no guards, no traps, just silence and a soft pull, like the world itself waited for them with hope and breath. The shuttle landed in a clearing of tall silver grass beneath a sky filled with slow-moving stars. Sari stepped out first, barefoot, her feet touching the soil, as if it remembered her, as if it welcomed her home. She walked forward, without hesitation. Jace followed close, his eyes scanning the strange trees. The tall stone shapes covered in glowing marks. None of it made sense, but all of it felt right. They reached a central space, an open circle with a single crystal pillar in the middle. It pulsed like a slow heartbeat. Sari touched it with both hands, and the ground shook slightly. The sky rippled, and the stars above rearranged, forming a new shape. A message written in light turned to Jace, her voice soft but sure. This place was made to protect what came before it, was hidden from the Drek, from the ones who broke the stars. It is the last of its kind, and it still listens. Jace nodded, stepping beside her, his hand brushing hers, his heart steady. Then, we protect it to whatever comes, whatever it takes. The crystal pillar suddenly darkened, then flashed with harsh red lights. Sari stumbled back, her hands shaking. Jace caught her before she fell, his eyes locked on the sky, as a new shape tore through it, a black shadow with red eyes and long claws, a ship, but not one they had ever seen before. The Drek had found them, or worse, something that had followed them from the maze, from the old sphere, something that had learned from pain and sights. And ship landed hard, the ground cracked open, and from the smoke stepped a figure wrapped in dark armor, its body twisted, its eyes burning not with rage but with cold purpose. It carried no weapon, but its hands shimmered with energy, sharp and brutal. Sari stepped forward, her glow rising, her eyes full of light and memory. You should not be here. This place is not for youth. Figure laughed, a sound like broken glass and metal chains. You made it for all. You opened the door. Now I walk through. It just moved between them, his fists clenched, his body tense. She said leave. The figure smiled and raised one hand. The ground beneath Jace exploded, sending him flying back. His armor cracked again, his side burned, but he got up slow and strong, ready to fight. Sari raised her hands. The air shimmered, the trees bent, the sky roared with color, and the figure paused for a moment, not in fear but in respect. So, you still have power, he said. Then show me. The battle began without sound. Sari moved like light, her hands shaping shields and fire. The figure danced through them like smoke, every hit shaking the world around them. Jace rushed in when he saw her stagger, slamming into the figure with all his strength, fists flying, elbows breaking, knees driving into metal. It screamed and struck back, but Jace did not fall, not this time, not here. They fought together, one of light and one of fire. Their movements won, their hearts won, every hit, every scream, every breath shared in battle. Sari caught the figure in a trap of light. Jace struck its core, and the body shattered, falling into ash that scattered across the cradle without a sound. The world fell quiet, the sky returned to silver, and the crystal pillar pulsed once more, calm and steady. Sari fell to her knees, tears in her eyes. Jace caught her, held her, rocked her in silence. He's done, she whispered. He nodded, held her tighter. Cradle lit up, brighter than before, energy flowing from every tree, every stone, every star above, as if the world breathed again, as if the last guardian had returned. Voices rose from the air, old and young, speaking in forgotten songs, thanking them, blessing them, promising that what was broken would never be forgotten again. Sari stood tall, her light now part of the cradle, her place, not just a survivor, but a guardian. Jace stood beside her, his scars fading, his strength Returned not because of machines or magic, but because of love. Because of her they looked out at the sky together, hand in hand, heart to heart, ready for whatever came next, not as soldier and healer, not as human and alien, but as one together. In blood together, in freedom forever, written among the stars.